You need to find out what is happening. Do not trust your reports. Do not trust when you're reading. Trust when your eyes are seeing. Implementing lean tools by themselves was not the key to success. If you go 100% just tools and you do not make sure that you are building a culture based on behaviors, based on principles, tools fade away in time.
Welcome to KPI Fireside. Our mission is simple: to improve companies and to improve careers through continuous improvement. In every episode, we explore the spark, the moment, the mindset, or the method that ignites real change. Whether you're just starting out or leveling up, you'll find the insights and inspiration to fuel your next improvement. Welcome back to KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. I am your host, Keith Norris. Our guest today is Marcial Portillo. Marcial is a global operations and continuous improvement leader with more than 30 years experience improving manufacturing and supply chain performance across the Americas, Europe, and Asia. He currently leads the deployment of Spirax Sarco's operational excellence framework across its global supply network, focusing on building leadership routines and behavior-based systems that make improvement sustainable. Through his career, Marcial has participated in over 120 Kaizen and Lean Six Sigma initiatives, helping organizations move beyond tools to develop the culture, systems, and leadership habits that drive lasting operational excellence. Marcial, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you for having me here.
I like to start the podcast with the question about the spark. And I can tell from our previous conversations and from your path that you've been on LinkedIn with Shingo and some things like that, you've been in this discipline of manufacturing for a number of years, and it looks like you found your way into a continuous improvement manager role and then beyond at some point. I'd like to have you tell us a little bit about how you got first aware of this discipline and then interested in making it a career choice.
Sure. Well, let me go back a few years, okay? My initial stages of my career, I was working for this organization in South America, specifically in Venezuela. It was a joint venture between an industrial Venezuelan group and Dyna Corporation. At that moment, I was a quality engineer, and then I was introducing a program called Excellence in Manufacturing. Excellence in Manufacturing was looking to implement something very similar to TPS, looking to reduce scrap and rework to 0%, reducing inventory to nothing at all, setup time, increasing only getting 100% of engagement from people and eliminating practically all non-value-added activities. So at that moment, I was trained with another group of individuals from that manufacturing facility in Venezuela on things like, lean tools and how to engage with people, how to facilitate small events to reduce setup times or to reduce lead time in an assembly area. Those were my first steps. After that, I moved to broader operational roles, within that facility, within that group, jumping to another companies. And actually, throughout my operational roles, I was never a CI guy whatsoever. I was first and foremost an operations manager, a plant manager, and eventually even a general manager. But I knew that toolbox, which contained lean tools, was to my disposal. So I used them. I used them to improve the efficiencies of the processes under my responsibilities. And eventually, 6 years ago, somebody called me and offered me a position within Spirax as a CI manager. And through my interviewing process, I was asking, why are you guys calling me? I'm not a CI guy. I'm an operations guy. And they told me that's what we're looking for. We are looking for somebody who understands the trenches, who could easily establish a rapport with shop floor individuals, shop floor operators, managers, and sell them the concept of lean tool and lean practitioner so that they will help them. And that was 6 years ago. My first role here in Expiras was a CI manager for our US facility here in Blackwood, South Carolina. Then I was promoted to CI manager for the whole American region, which it's 2 facilities in the US. We had at that moment 1 facility in Mexico. We do not have that anymore. 2 facilities in Brazil and 1 facility in Argentina. And based on my previous operational roles, I was quite aware that implementing lean tools by themselves was not the key to success. Actually, if you go 100% just tools and you do not make sure that you are building a culture based on behaviors, based on principles, tools fade away in time. So at that moment, it was decided by the management team of the Americas, let's think of what do we do to make sure that we establish a basic foundation, cultural foundation, which will be able to sustain this initiative in time. And that's where we came about finding Shingo, the Shingo model. And at that moment, I fell in love with the idea. It was not easy for me as an engineer to start talking about behaviors and, psychology of things. It's much easier for me to measure the rhythm of a machine, but instead of measuring the faces of the individuals and making sure that these faces correspond to somebody who really wants to be a practitioner or somebody who is there just to listen. Short story, a guy who was born in the shop floor, a guy who knew about the tools, but also who knew through failures that tools alone do not give you what you're looking for. You need to combine that with behaviors, with culture and leadership standards. And that's how I got to do what I'm doing right now. After Shingo in the Americas, forgot to tell you this, then another business area of Spirax, to give you a little bit of context, there are 3 different business units within the Spirax group. And each business unit has perhaps between 8 to 12, 12-ish different organizations throughout the world, companies in Europe, Asia, Americas, etc. So in one of these business units, an operational excellence framework was developed. Very successful, very successful. So last year, around January, February of last year, the whole 3 businesses got together to combine the best practices of operational excellence framework, the one that was developed from these other businesses. And from my business, Steam Thermal Solutions, we put our experience with our Shingo model. The good thing is that we were able to compile that framework, and we were able to add to that framework a cultural base. So based on corporate values, we define for every element of every pillar what is the expected behavior. So we are not only measuring self-directed teams' levels of maturity, we're also measuring members of those self-directed teams' engagement and compliance against the expected behaviors. So it's not a Shingo model, but it's a hybrid of the good things from Shingo with the good things from that operational framework. And that's what we are right now kicking off deployment for all businesses of Spirax. And I'm in charge of the business called Steam Thermal Solutions.
So what a CI manager, continuous improvement manager, I assume is the full name of that. What kind of activities does that role include? And has that changed from when you started there to what it is now? Is it aligned?
It's evolving. It's evolving. I would lie to you if I tell you that we have one unique function, just somebody doing CI. Most of them right now, they do that, okay? And as a CI leader, we call it CI leader for whatever. It's not a managerial position. Some of those CI leaders, they do report to the GM. Some of them, they report to the ops manager. And basically, they are responsible of implementing the CI principles, okay? And now they are responsible of implementing the OpEx framework. So they do things such as they do participate on management teams, management meetings to foresee what the needs of that organization are and how those needs could be tackled with CI projects. And then they will come up with a pipeline of projects to be implemented throughout the year, and with a given target of hard savings that each facility must achieve. Now, achieving hard savings through a project requires a framework that helps that project is visualized and implemented correctly. And that's where the OpEx framework comes on board. And that is also the responsibility, not only of the CI leader, but also of the GM and the GM minus one, as we say, everybody reporting to the general manager. And therefore, the CI leader is the guy helping, consulting, coaching the rest of the management team to make sure that we follow the protocols to establish things such as policy deployment, which is one element of one pillar, or self-directed teams, daily management, as we used to call it in the Shingo terminology. So the CI leader is engaging himself or herself in this role. My participation is to make sure that we follow the standards. I define the standards. I define them with them. Okay. It's not like this is the protocol for self-directed teams. You guys go ahead. We have very heated discussions, as to what should be our approach for self-directed teams, just to give you an example. And that is good because that's providing, richness of what we are supposed to do. We still have a long way to go. Obviously, our facilities in the Americas have an advantage because we work with the Chingo model for 2 years, almost 3 years. So they are used to the terminology. They're used to, implementing systems and making sure that systems are driving behaviors and the behaviors are driving results. Okay. We're still taking the initial steps in Europe and also in Asia Pacific. Last year, we had a pilot test in Italy, which was great because my wife, she's Italian, my son is Italian. So it was an opportunity for me to practice my Italian. And we could choose Italy because Italy was going through a very difficult situation, performing wise. They were not delivering as for customers' expectations, specifically on one product line, heat exchangers. So I talked to the GM and I told him, Jan, why don't we do this? Let's go to Italy. Let's resolve your problems with the heat exchanger area, with the welding area. Well, let's do that by applying some specific elements of some pillars. So then we could prove that by implementing OpEx, operational excellence, we are resolving your issues. We're getting results. And it did work. It's amazing how the level of engagement, participation from our welders improved dramatically. We trained them on identifying waste and eliminating waste. It was not easy at the beginning. Everybody was there participating on a self-directed team, just doing nothing, saying nothing. But we keep asking questions such as, what was the waste you saw yesterday? What is the waste that you see today? Remember when we were training about looking waste and how to get rid of them? So eventually things starting to get better through higher participation, combined with leader standard words, which were defined and they were followed by the letter. At the beginning, some leaders said, why do I have to go there? That's the role for the operations managers. I'm in charge of engineering. And I looked at him. You have no idea how many issues you guys are creating that are creating problems in the shop floor. So go there. And that combination of leadership standards followed to the letter, given the opportunity for people to participate, started creating the trust, among the people on the shop floor, among the supporting managers. And to put this quickly in a couple of sentences, labor cost was reduced to a point that Italy produced almost €500,000 last year coming from improved throughput of heat exchange.
Wow. That's an
Right?
impressive savings. Are you struggling to ignite real change in your continuous improvement program? Firestarter is your field guide. Real stories, proven strategies, no fluff. Get it now on Amazon. Let me have you go back to the leadership standard work comment for a minute, because it sounded like there was a specific line item in that leadership standard work being a set of behaviors that you want the leaders to go do on a regular basis, maybe daily, weekly, monthly, something like that.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
was the one specifically that you found you were they were maybe not doing, but then you said, do this, and it started to work? What was that
Yeah.
one?
When you're talking about behaviors, sometimes people do not understand the importance of that. Okay. Some leaders, especially supporting roles, may think that why do I need to be present so much in the shop floor? My job is here in this office. I'm cranking numbers, designing new heat exchanger. That's my role. So we have a lot of heated discussions through probably 3 or 4 different sessions, and I was explaining then that when you hear somebody from continuous improvement talking about the Gemba and the importance to go into the Gemba, it's because this is not the flavor of the month. This is because you need to go there. You need to find out what is happening. Do not trust your reports. Do not trust when you are reading. Trust when your eyes are seeing. And if you are expecting people to trust you, you have to walk the talk. You have to go there, listen to their problems. And if they're having problems with a drawing that is not clear enough, for crying out loud, take that drawing, take it back with your people and fix it. So through those discussions, we decided 3 different behaviors for leadership, team, and shop floor people. And one of the 3 behaviors that we were expecting from leaders was to be there on a meeting. We have 5 managers, and we were asking each manager to be one day. So for them, it was going to be 1 meeting per week. Not a big deal to be able to achieve. But we had our issues, we had our issues. And that's where we had our arguments and discussion. The good thing in Italy, and this goes for every facility that is trying to implement these types of frameworks, if high leadership is aligned, you will find issues, problems, but you will be able to resolve them because you are completely convinced that this is the way to go. Okay. And the GM in Italy and we were completely aligned. And my boss and her boss and his boss were completely aligned. So as long as high leadership is completely aligned and understand the importance of doing this, then you're going to be able to remove obstacles. I don't want to say in an easier way, but you will have the conditions to be able to remove the obstacles. You will have the conditions to have these discussions and to tell somebody, no, you are not right. You need to go and see what's happening. The good thing, Keith, is that after a few weeks of, back and forth, then these guys approach me, man, now I'm learning more about what impact I have on those guys. And I'm getting some good ideas as to how we could improve this design. And I kept telling them, and I have said this from day one as a quality engineer back in Venezuela. I mean, I went to school, I graduated as a mechanical engineer, I have a master's degree. I know nothing when it compares to the guy that is facing the machine. They are the guys who knows what's really cooking. So please go to them, ask them, and many solutions will come from that source.
The meeting that you were asking them to go to, what kind of meeting was that? Was it like a short?
That was a tier 1 meeting.
What you mean?
That was a tier 1 meeting. We structured, like a regular self-directed team. We structured 3 tiers. One tier 1, which was at the welding area. By the way, we did not go 100% in all areas because it was a pilot test. We were training, testing, defining behaviors, measuring behavior. So on that tier one meeting, we have a regular SQDCP board, okay? The P at the end was personal. We were measuring behaviors, and we had red and white, red and green. And I was there. I was the one measuring the behavior. So every time somebody from any particular level didn't display the right behaviors, I will put a red and I will explain. And sometimes people say, wait a minute, what? We did everything right. You forgot to do this, okay? And okay. So on a daily basis, we have that tier one. We also decided, define, and establish a tier two, which was done also daily. And it was very interesting because in that tier two, you could see how more information was flowing from welding area to the tier two compared to the other production areas, which didn't have a tier one established. So that was the first trigger for people to understand, okay, this really works. We also established a tier three, which we didn't do it daily. We thought that it was too much to be handled on a daily basis. So we define an agenda of topics. We divide those topics in 4. So we had a tier 3 once a week. But at the same time, we use policy deployment to make sure that strategy was tied to objectives in the show floor. And we define leader standard work to make sure that leaders are encouraging through the established systems the right behaviors expected from everybody else, being the models by then displaying the behaviors that are expected to display.
For anybody that might not be totally familiar with your industry or even tier boards, let's just paint a little context here. So tier 1, you said, was like welding. So is tier 1 like the work cell level, like the people working in that area?
Yeah, tier one was right in the welding area. Welders were attending, and it was led by the welding leader, the set leader. The idea was for the welder leader to start asking questions. Okay, what guys, what problems have you identified? What issues are you having? We were avoiding not to have a meeting where the operators were just looking and listening to what the team leader was saying. And that was perhaps one of the behaviors more difficult to implement, because people are used to listen to their leaders. In this case, we were promoting the guys to stand up and communicate. And there were many occasions in which I said, Marco, that's the name of the team leader. Marco, hold on. Ask the question, who saw a waste? What is happening in the show floor? What is impeding the guys to produce at the expected rhythm? And then, okay, I have this problem. This drawing doesn't make any sense. I don't know where the specification is. I'm waiting for the materials. Hey, this welding rod sucks big time. Where do you guys buy this welding rod? And eventually, the team leader started taking a step back, and at the beginning, he was writing down waste when he was talking to the welders. And we got to a moment in which the welders themselves, I have this issue. This is a waste. I need quality to do this. And they were writing in good Italian on the board. So when you start looking at this phenomenon, then you say, okay, we're on the right track. We still have a long way to go. Don't get me wrong. We have miles to go, but I'm happy to say that we're taking the right first steps. And actually, that model is the one that we are basing to scale up for the rest of our division.
So that sounds like a very good daily huddle at the work cell level. And then the tier 2, described is the tier 2 like the leader of that team and the leader of another team? How did your tier 2s function, and how many different work cells are in?
The tier 2 was conducted by the ops manager and the supporting roles. So each team leader had a previous meeting with the ops manager to feed him information. And as I said earlier, since only one team leader had a tier 1, you could see that only problems were being escalated from that area. Okay. And the other areas, they didn't have a system to voice their concerns. So it was the same board, but with a larger scope. So the waste identified at a larger scope, which was the whole facility, was a combination of all of the different production areas. And you could see that not everything, but a high percentage of the things that were discussed were coming from the welding.
Just for context, you had a welding area. What were some of the other areas that are involved in an operations meeting
We have
in your
a
industry?
welding area. We have a valve area where valves are, some components are manufactured and assembled. We also have, I forgot the name of the product, the scale or something. And we have a big assembly area for highly engineered products like clean steam generators. They're assembled together. It's
And the
not a
tier
big
two,
facility.
is that where you start to get things coming up like, the guys in valves are saying like, those people over in welding, they don't understand. Why do they always send it to us like this?
Well, actually, some of that happened, but also some people start approaching Marco, some other cell leaders. Why are you doing this? Explain to me. That's interesting. What about if I do it too? And before we finished the pilot test, we escalated, we decided to go to another area, which by the way was the valve area, because this particular team leader, he saw an opportunity. Oh man, I want to do the same. And also, when you see people getting recognition and what they doing, and people want to be a part of that party. This is working. I keep telling the guys on the show floor, I am here to help your work be safer, easier, and faster. When they hear that, that's interesting. Let me give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And when they start seeing more engagement from the supporting role, they start destroying that big wall between shop floor people and supporting roles. Before, people from engineering hardly ever talk to anybody from the shop floor. Okay, and you may say, well, that probably is a particular problem in Italy. It happens more often than you really give credit to it. And Gemba is something that we very seldom go to, and that's one of the most important behaviors as leaders that we need to change.
That's so interesting. Having as many facilities as you guys do and in as many different parts of the world, a lot of the stuff that, let's say, if we're here in the United States or in any single country, you take for granted things like just the language that you speak. We're speaking English. But, when you've got a different plant in a different country speaking a different language, now you've got this challenge of connecting these behaviors, but doing them in a different language. I think that's kind of an interesting fact of this discipline is that regardless of the language that you speak, the behavior patterns, can be represented.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely the behaviors are replicated no matter what language, no matter what particular country culture you have. However, talking about language, before I go to Italy, I did a little bit of work trying to customize some concepts to the Italian language. And what do I mean by that? If you speak to anyone as a lean practitioner and you ask him what's downtime or what's teamwork, they will tell you that's the acronym for the 8 ways.
Yeah.
Super. I wanted to develop an acronym in Italian.
That works in Italian.
And so we developed the acronym called Spartito.
Espartito.
Yeah, and let me tell you, this was the most useful use of artificial intelligence because I was working with ChatGPT. I don't want to talk to these guys and tell them downtime. So let's work here and trying to design the same concept, but in Italian, and then come up with the acronym. And Espartito, the first letter is S, and S stands for sovrapproduzione, which is overproduction. Now, this partito means key musical, So Italians are very good at music. So I keep telling, this is the key that you need to play, Spartito. You need to play Spartito to make sure that you are getting rid of your waste. And that, believe it or not, it helped. It helped deliver the message. Obviously, coming up with a acronym in a local language for 10 different facilities may not be that easy. I think I would go bananas trying to do something in China or India, but you need to somehow factor in the language. And that's one thing that I'm very careful of. I try to always be with somebody that is bilingual English and also proficient in the local language, so to make sure that you're able to send the message. But
So if
back to your point, behaviors are replicable. Behaviors are replicable, and issues with drawings happens in the UK, happens in the US, happens in Brazil, happens everywhere.
so you've been involved in a lot of different iterations of this discipline. And you talked about how it doesn't work if you just go about it as the tools. And a lot of people have probably been in an organization where some consultant or some internal person came in and did some training and then left. What's your advice for how do you go from, hey, this was this fun training that we did with Marcel to sometimes things can get a little bit stale perhaps? What's the trick to not letting it just be forgotten or get boring?
The trick to me is a combination of authenticity and presence. You need to be present. You cannot go there and teach them something and then disappear. You need to go there. You need to work with them, ask the right questions. You coach them. Help them through the implementation, go through the suffering they have to go. And that's what we learned in the pilot test we have in Mexico, here in the Americas when we were doing Shingo. That's what we learned when we were doing the pilot test in Italy for the new OPEX framework. If you simply are there to show something to do, but you do not work with them through the implementation phase, then things start fading away, or things will be subject to different interpretations, different approaches, and the end result will be that you're not reaching what you were looking for. Okay. So the way I see it, my approach is be there, be available. Even when I left Italy, I have bi-weekly meetings with them, and we go over what they're doing. And I also have bi-weekly meetings with every single facility. But I had my established trips to each facility, and I work with them. I do the Gemba walks. And if we have an issue with a particular element, then we go deep enough to make sure that the understand is correct and the implementation is going as expected. And sometimes you find surprises, some nice surprises. Things are going faster. Sometimes you find nasty surprises that things are not going as you were expected. But if you disappear, then things will be developed by themselves, by inertia. You have to be there. You also have to, during these meetings, to identify who is your second on board. Nobody reports to me. When I say second on board, I'm meaning somebody who it's a complete apostle, completely convinced that this is the way to go, and he or she wants to learn. So you're working with him or with her, and you're guiding him or you're guiding her, and she or he becomes your eyes in the facility. And so in that way, even though you are remotely, you have your connection. So having that remote connection, being present and be authentic, but to me, there are elements that are needed to make sure that things are going as you are intending them to go.
Well, you mentioned how the standard work was like the leadership standard work was a key piece of that. And I think what I'm hearing is that's part of that standard work is this cadence of checking in, like, did you go to the meeting? Did you spend time with the Gemba? And it sounds like you have some stuff that you do every couple of weeks to confirm. This is a theme that I hear a lot on a lot of improvements. Improvements happen and then sometimes things don't get sustained. They like slide back down. And
Exactly.
this pattern of like checking in on it on some frequency is
It is needed. Italy and the Americas facilities, they have established themselves a way to include checking leader standard work in their tier 3 meetings. Okay. I am comfortable with the way things are being checked in the Americas because of the level of maturity. I'm still through these bi-weekly meetings. asking the right questions. How's this going? What have we found? Or well, we make sure that we are lagging in this particular behavior. We were expecting to be attending more meetings, or we were expecting to be coaching more people, or we were expecting to be participating in more Gemba walks. And so, all right, so what are you doing about it? And well, we're going to be reinforcing this. We're going to be making sure that whoever is responsible to be choosing somebody to be a coach, that is really actually happening. And of course, there's going to be a lot of trust, and you need to little by little be giving enough confidence to the GM, and the GM minus one to eventually have them be the leaders of the deployment. Because it's impossible for me to be present in every facility as much as I would like to. It will be completely affecting negatively the trading profit just because of my trips. So you need to have a combination of these biweekly meetings, the establish protocols, make sure that in each, and this comes from the Shingo model recipe, a system, that system has some communication tools. You have a standard protocol that govern the system. You should be able to issue reports on a given frequency. Those reports should have a combination of KPIs and KPIs that are measuring the effectiveness of the system. So with those communication tools, part of these protocols is how we intend to make sure that the systems are evolving, the meetings are taking place. And if they are not performing unexpected, it's because we have the measures that tell us that we need to do something. What are we doing about it? So it's this interaction of establishing a system, the report levels, the monitoring of KPIs and KPIs, the biweekly meetings, and the trust that you need to eventually provide to these guys are the elements that at least we are using.
Yeah.
We are using because we learned them in the Americas through our Chingo experience, and they worked. And we are trying to copy and paste the same methodology, if you will, to make sure that our elements of our pillars of our new OPEX framework are going through the deployment.
So I'm sure the primary benefits from the CFO and the people that pay for the programs are always like the hard savings and things like that. But what are some benefits that maybe you've seen through these implementations that you didn't necessarily expect, or that you were positively surprised by how it's helped the organization or the people?
That's a good question. We need to show the color of the money to our CFOs and our CEOs. Okay, if we do not show the color of the money, then people will not be on your side. But you have to do that very carefully. You have to do that making sure that money is important, but changing culture is even more important. So when you start seeing things such as engagement level, there was a time where I will not say what facility. Well, this facility was rated to have the worst engagement level throughout the whole division. When we started working with this framework of excellence, operational excellence, through the participation in daily management, through the more problem solving because they were identifying more trust between operators and the rest of the management team, the engagement level went up the roof. And from being the last facility, they got to be the first one on the division. And that was a way for us to say, you see, it's not just money. We are creating culture here. We are creating people who understand the importance of identifying a problem, using problem solving, keeping their behaviors, and making sure that this is sustainable in time. Hard savings are important. Cost avoidance and soft savings are also, in my opinion, as important or even more. So that's one way that we have used in the past. And it's very easy to measure because, coming from the last to the first in just 1 year,
Yes.
is a clear signal that things are working.
Yeah, that's something that I think is unique about large organizations with multiple locations is you tend to be able to evaluate things differently than, let's say it's, a smaller manufacturer with only one site and you implement something like this and you're like, yeah, we did better this year than last year. And sometimes it can be a little harder to isolate what caused that, or did we just get lucky? Was it some external factor. But when you have different sites, you get a little different lens into the experiment that was ran here versus theirs. Value the opinions of folks like yourself who get to see firsthand. No, really, like I saw what the Shingo model or this lean discipline and how it was able to affect the organization.
Obviously, we are developing complete dashboards, which will tell us and telling us element per pillar. To give you an example, one pillar is collaboration and engagement. One element of that pillar is self-directed team. So in every element, in every pillar, we are monitoring progress. How is the level of maturity progressing?
Yeah.
So that's one component of that of the dashboard. We also have the showing of the money process. This is the projects we are supposed to produce for the whole division, 2 million pounds of savings. And that 2 million pounds of savings is being divided by such, such, and such. And let's say the UK is responsible for 800,000 pounds of that 2 million pounds. Okay, how are those projects evolving? Are they yielding the results? So that's your money component. And also the component, the cultural component. How are the behaviors? Are you able to link behavior with KPIs? It's am I getting the results, my efficiencies through the right way or through the wrong way? So those three components is a big dashboard. We have a different system which is allowing us to measure how maturity is progressing, measure how the projects are progressing and yielding.
That sounds great. Marcel, I want to ask you this next segment here. I'll call this the rapid fire. So these are just some quick questions, kind of top of mind answers here. So you can finish the sentence here. The most important job of a leader is to?
Leaders are supposed to enable, to provide resources, but to me, the most important job is to develop people through coaching and providing clear expectations and leader standards.
That's a great answer. Do you have a favorite go-to problem-solving tool or visual device?
Wow. Yes, I do. The one that I always, my first reaction is to go to either a combination of flow chart or some sort of process map, because you need to understand what you are facing. And that's to me, one tool that allows you to draw the picture, So that's the first one, but that is not the only one I use, I definitely I use a lot of observations. I spend a lot of time on the show floor. I ask questions, and sometimes I ask, who's your favorite soccer team? Nothing related to productivity, just to establish rapport. So observations, first-hand observation, it's is one thing that I also use combined to a flow chart that tells me, or that will give me a pretty good idea of what is happening or what's cooking.
A great one. I'm a big fan of the flow charts for sure. Do you have a book or maybe multiple books that you'd recommend somebody who's interested in this discipline that they should check out?
I laugh because here I have the whole Shingo collection,
Okay.
I go back and forth. I have read these books, I don't know how many times, because I always go back. Am I doing this right? But right now I'm reading a book called KBI, Key Behavior Indicators. It's written by a gentleman called Richard Perry. Looks very interesting. It's amazing to see how KBIs are measures that are not applied by many organizations, and once you start applying, then it's really an eye opener, for cultural transformation. So I recommend that book. I'm reading that book right now.
That's a great one. I'll have to check that out. Finish this sentence. Continuous improvement is?
I said it, making work easier, faster, and safer.
I love it. Awesome. Do you have a favorite question?
How things are going? Where do you see things are not working well, and how can I help you?
Great question. Give us a prediction of some kind about the future of continuous improvement.
I think that continuous improvement definitely has a great future because it has an element, a component of like a human component that will always be present. You could come up with tools, new versions, but if you do not include or attach that tool to a complete understanding of behaviors, dealing with people skills, then things will not be as effective or as efficient as you're expecting. So as long as we have people on the shop floor, people managing process, people producing stuff or assembling stuff, continuous improvement will be there because people are people and they behave differently. So I see that to be a discipline that will be with us for a long time to go. It's when was TPS defined? Back in the these or something, it's still going on.
Yeah, it continues to evolve. It's funny how there's no shortage of things to improve.
Yeah.
Never ending. What's something that you're fired up about? What are you excited about or looking forward to?
I'm very fired up right now. First of all, my most immediate objective is to make sure that we successfully deploy this OPS framework. That is something that I'm looking to be like a legacy that I'm leaving before I retire. As you can see, I have a lot of gray hair. I'm getting close to that age where you're going to be looking to go more often to fish or to go to swim. And I'm really looking to do that, but my most immediate goal is to make sure that this is done properly and that I am passing the torch to somebody that will continue. That's very important. And also it's another project that I had in mind, not to be bored when I retire, is to perhaps, help other companies, help other organizations. I do not mean to be a, 5-star consultant because that's not what I would like to do. But if I'm able to utilize my knowledge, my experience to help, especially family-owned, small, medium-sized organization, I would love to do that. I think that will be something which I will be very happy to do.
Well, that sounds awesome. I definitely support you in that. What's the best place for anybody who might want to follow up with you, ask a question, learn from your experience?
They could reach out to me to LinkedIn. They have already done that. I have already, and this is completely known by anyone in Spirax. I think Spirax actually encourage us to establish our own network, and exchange ideas. Because through that exchange of ideas, then we bring stuff that we could apply to our own reality. And that has happened already. And I found that to be very useful. And I think that I really enjoys anyone who wants to get a hold of me, just send me a text through LinkedIn and I will respond.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Marcel. It's been really great connecting with you again and having a little conversation with you. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your experiences and those stories, and hopefully it can benefit us and some others that might listen to this. So really appreciate having you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me again.
You bet. You bet. And for our listeners, if you'd like to suggest a guest, ask a question, or give us any ideas for episodes, or share some feedback on the content, you can reach out to me, Keith Norris, on LinkedIn. And this concludes today's episode of KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. If you've enjoyed the episode, be sure to add a comment, like, follow, subscribe as appropriate on the socials, and share the podcast with friends or colleagues who are as passionate about continuous improvement as you are. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. And until next time, keep driving progress and sparking change. This episode is brought to you by KPI Fire, the all-in-one platform for continuous improvement. With KPI Fire, you can align strategy, drive execution, and engage your people. So whether you're leading a team or driving enterprise-wide change, KPI Fire helps you deliver real results. Learn more at www.kpifire.com.